I want to ask the people here who care about me, Jessica, Jeremy, Mike Ryan, Chris Cody, Amin, David Sampson, how I should feel after, I don't know, close to 30 years in journalism, no, more than 30 years in journalism, that I now have to pay attention to Tyler Hero removing Miami Heat guard from his bio and changing his header on his social media. How should I feel about that?
I think he unfollowed the Heat too.
You should feel old.
How did players do that in like the 80s and 90s? Like, how did you send a passive-aggressive message to your team?
Such a good question.
He didn't. You know why? In the 80s and 90s, we were direct, aggressive. None of this, I'm from the year 2000 and I have feelings. None of that stuff. You went up to your manager and you spat in his face. And that's how he knew to respect you.
Men.
Not true at all. You were scared of the authority figures. The authority figures had even more power than they have today.
You talk to like a reporter, right? And then something would be written in the paper.
Yeah, quietly. You would talk to me. Maybe this is why it makes me sad. Mike Ryan is not in a good place with the reporting going on around Damian Lillard, because you've got two different information insiders that are hugely credible saying totally different things about Damian Lillard and Portland. You've got Damian Lillard intent, according to Shams, on going to Miami and nowhere else. And I'd like the executives, the former executives in the room, to explain to me what that means, because I thought that Damian Lillard might be a breaking point on, does he get what he wants? Is he good enough and strong enough with a no-trade clause to get Portland to make him do what all the other superstars have made their teams do and make sure that Portland gets less than they might get otherwise just because he wants it?
Doesn't have a no-trade clause.
So
no, I know.
Start with that he doesn't get to control. What his agents are doing, they're doing a great job of leaking right now. Talking about other teams that were interested. Portland has been given talking points to say we're not going to settle. We're not just going to trade him to the Heat because he wants to go to the Heat. But now they've leaked the leaker. So the new message point is Lillard will be very unhappy if he's anywhere but Miami, which is supposed to make a front office person say, oh, God, we can't trade for a guy who's going to come in and be an absolute turd in the locker room immediately. So therefore, we're not going to trade for him.
Would you ever be afraid to acquire someone who says, I don't want to go there?
Absolutely not, because fine, don't play.
He's not a good person to ask.
No.
Are you?
You're not a good person to ask, though, because
you could have just ended that. You're not a good person.
Yeah, I mean, the way that you do this, he does this maximum not caring about anybody's human feelings.
No. I'm not talking about Portland. I'm talking about if you were another team. So, I'd love to get Damian Lillard, and the cost for you to get into this is multiple first-round picks, maybe some young prospects that you really value in your organization. For a guy who's saying bluntly, I don't want to play for you.
Would you go to your owner and say, I don't want Lillard, we're not a better team with Lillard because he doesn't want to be here? Or would you say, this talent wins. This is a talent league. Let's bring him in, and we'll count on whoever we have in-house. We'll count on him to be fine because we're going to help him win a championship.
I think 8 out of 10 GMs say, I can convince, just get him in here, and he'll change his mind. The 9th is actually good enough to make it happen. And then the 10th is smart enough to say, I can't give up stuff for someone who does not want to be here.
So you're the 10th.
I probably would be the 10th, yeah.
When you talk about Damian Lillard in particular in this making a mess scenario, now this was hypothetical and a couple of years ago, but Dame did once say that if he was going to demand a trade, he would want to make sure that it was to the place that he wanted, or else he'd be willing to sit out games.
He once said it. Was he like 12 when he said it?
It was 2 years ago.
Let's cover some of this here, because it is funny, right, that LeBron James played 11 years in a place and never asked for a trade and was viewed as traitorous, and Damian Lillard plays 11 years at a place and asks for a trade and somehow is more loyal than LeBron James. But, Amin, as it relates specifically to what Portland's responsibility is, Portland's responsibility is to get the best players, period. I don't see why once he requests the trade, they have to care in any way what Damian Lillard wants, in any way. I feel like he might be a breaking point on players having power, because why does Portland have to adhere to something that will make them worse? Why do they have to make a choice on behalf of Damian Lillard when it's not reasonable to think that if they send someone, if they send him to OKC or someplace where he doesn't really want to live, but if they choose to send him to Brooklyn because that's the better offer, why couldn't they do that?
If I may, you said that I was frustrated with the media coverage of it, and you just said flatly it would make them worse, and I don't think that that's the state of Miami's package. I really don't. But you don't need your third eye open for this one. I mean, you can one eye open
with an eye patch on.
We understand why this is playing out in the media space the way that it is, with Shams being pro Damian Lillard. He only wants to play for Miami, and Woj say, pump the brakes. I don't have to send him anywhere, and this package isn't good enough for Portland because a Draft Express former employee, which is like Woj's protege arm, now works as the assistant GM in Portland. So they're actually working through Woj to gain some leverage in a situation where normally when a superstar does this, which actually isn't all that often, by the way. If you look at the history in the 21st century of stars demanding trades, most of the big stars that have ever done this have only done this once. And then there's James Harden, who's done it 3 times in the last 36 months.
The funny thing is, you guys keep saying Shams is like, it's every major reporter not affiliated with the worldwide leader. They're all saying it's Miami. It's Miami, and there is no wiggle room there. And meanwhile, we got for a couple of hours on Friday or Saturday, well, don't rule out San Antonio yet, which to me it blew my mind that someone would go to air and have multiple people under them also go to air talking about this, because it's unconscionable to bring up San. You could say, hey, there's a long list of teams that are interested. You know, the Nets are interested, the Sixers are, hell, the San Antonio Spurs are interested. Of course, everyone's interested. But when they're talking about don't rule out San Antonio.
It was actually the scroll on ESPN during their NBA show on Saturday that said that Dame had deep respect for the Spurs. It didn't imply anything other than he deeply respects. He might just be a Popovich fan. He was just saying that as an aside when he was, I like Miami. But as an aside, I have deep respect for the Spurs. That's how people talk.
But
right?
It's not just ESPN. It's also The Ringer, which I think is just all like Boston Celtics fans freaking out when they're writing. Kevin O'Connor sent out literally the longest tweet in the history of the platform.
How do you know?
I don't even know how
he needs to be
How
stopped.
How can you tweet that much?
He's the reason we ran into the rate limit problem. It was that tweet from Kevin O'Connor where he was saying that Tyler Hero and a bevy of picks and I think Kyle Lowry was a terrible trade. And in this terrible trade, Nurkic actually goes to the Heat, which is all Portland is looking to do. Get someone to take Nurkic. And that makes it a good trade for Portland.
That makes it a good trade for Miami, if you're going to be honest.
If we're going to go into the tax, I'd rather go into the tax for Nurkic than Ben Simmons, which is another thing that's floating out there right now. But then he follows it up with, Brogdon and Time Lord for Damian Lillard. That's the trade that you make. And all of these people judging Miami's trade, I think, really devalues what Tyler Hero actually is. There's this narrative out there that Tyler Hero is a bad contract. And I understand the pivot that Tyler Hero is not great for Portland and their project right now. How? How is a 23-year-old on $27 million who's averaging over 20 points a game, who's not this inefficient player by any stretch of the imagination, how is he a bad contract? How is he a bad player when you're rebuilding? He's an asset.
I think the reason why is because you have 3 guys that you're pretty confident about who don't make $27 million. That's why. And so it's all posturing.
Who do some of the same things.
Who do many of the same things. Right?
Simons.
I said Simmons?
No. I'm just saying one of the players that does in terms of roster duplication.
Okay, yeah. Well, I mean, look, if Scoot Henderson is going to be what Scoot Henderson is going to be, you probably don't want him fighting another guy for touches and minutes so early. But the reality, Dan, is you say, why shouldn't Portland demand to have the best players coming back? The best players possible, yes, but there are many objectives when you're trading away your franchise player. It's not just getting great players back. And in fact, in the NBA, I would argue most of the time it's not getting great players back. Those Gone are the days of trading Adrian Dantley for Mark Aguirre. Like, that doesn't happen anymore. Now it's like someone's getting the star and someone's getting a better future. And the better future comes in the draft picks. It comes on young prospects that you think could grow into being something. And it comes in salary cap flexibility. And Lillard's deal is long, but also if you want him, you're going to take Nurkic, right? So then if it turns into, well, we can't do a one-to-one deal because you don't like the young player I'm trying to send you, Tyler Hero. So now we get a third team, and it's Brooklyn. And Brooklyn's saying, okay, I'm down to take Hero and send some picks that way, but you guys got to do me a favor. What's the favor? You got to take my Ben Simmons contract off. So then it expands more, and they're trying to find more places because not only is it a bad contract to be paying out cash-wise, but salary cap wise in terms of how much flexibility we have. But with the new collective bargaining agreement, there are all sorts of penalties the deeper you go into this. And so if you're Miami, Mike, to your point, it's not about Ben Simmons. Oh, I don't think he's good anymore. Whatever. That's kind of irrelevant. You'll take a flyer on him. The problem is he pushes you into that second apron territory where it's like, this is your team, and it's not going to change.
This deal gets done the second, if that second ever comes. And right now, I'm with the Heat in playing this out and seeing how long you can stretch this out before Portland gets nervous. This deal gets done if Miami just says, yeah, we'll take Nurkic, right?
I don't know. I think there's more pressure happening to get more and more.
Well, Dan, what do you think?
Who cares what I think, Mike? Everyone seems to have a lot of opinions on this. And David wanted to say something about this, too.
I was just a little surprised that you're talking about a team, Portland. If they had their druthers, they wouldn't trade Lillard. They're not trying to rebuild or retool. And so the question is, should a player force a front office to change what their plan is? And I am a hard no on that.
Dan, can you finally give your thoughts on your show in the next segment about the Damian Lillard Miami Heat story, please?
What are you smiling about? We'll talk Marlins next. To answer your question, Mike, I don't think that Miami's offer is the best offer. And I don't know what the distance is between we can take a diluted offer in Portland. We can be a team that, in order to please our superstar, can do some things to come close to the best offer. But I may be wrong about that. I think Tyler Hero's a very good player. I was asking Amin before the show, isn't Tyler Hero about as good as Maxey? I think they're about as good as each other. I don't think Maxey is better than Tyler Hero. I think there's some recency bias on Tyler Hero didn't play in this round of the playoffs, so we're ignoring that he's a very good scorer that I imagine Brooklyn would very much like to have. But I also think that there has to be a better offer than that, for Damian Lillard. And you were saying, when I talked to you earlier, that you thought Portland's GM was in over his head.
Yeah, I mean, look, Joe Cronin, this is his first GM job, and I think his track record thus far has been someone who doesn't get great return on deals. They've drafted very well. But in terms of transactions, in terms of trades, in terms of free agent signings, they're not good at this. And I think this isn't kind of hey, there's one thing to trade C.J. McCollum or trade Norm Powell. Those are deals that, that good players and you try to get good return on them, but they happen mostly kind of in the shadows. Damian Lillard, this is prime time. The world is watching you. And so there's an element of, oh crap, I gotta get this one really right because I'm basically publicly campaigning for my job at this point.
How much better can you do than Tyler Hero?
That's the problem because everyone knows you're leveraged. That it's not about what Portland wants so much as it's what everybody else is offering. And if everyone else is saying, well, you're leveraged out of your mind, like I've got you over the barrel and show you the 50 states, then it doesn't matter. You could say, hey, I want Jaylen Brown in return. Well, Jaylen Brown caliber player. That guy's not available. No one's throwing that out there for Damian Lillard. So with all due respect to David, you said, Portland, their plan is – no, they don't have a plan. It's been obvious they don't have a plan for the last 3 or 4 years. They've been a rudderless team that can't compete and does we were trying to tank anyway thing. They've done that 3 years in a row now. And so to me, there's an element of this where they have to trade Dame, not because of Dame. They've reached a point where you got these young guys now. The best thing you can do is put them in a position where they're going to have the best assets available to them in a couple of years. Keeping a 33-year-old Damian Lillard is going to be making $45, $50, $55 million. That doesn't help them as a team, as a franchise. But like you said, that doesn't mean I got to take any old deal that Miami asked for. So the idea is give me some cap relief, take some of these bad deals that I don't want off my hands, and get me draft picks. And if I'm Portland and what Miami's offering is a player that doesn't really fit in what I'm trying to do, I'm saying, look, I don't care what you do with him. All right, go get me more out of that. And that's where the involvement of more teams comes in.
When you're talking about trades like this for, I don't want to call Portland a small market team.
It's a small market team.
A team that doesn't necessarily
It's like the smallest market in the NBA.
Okay, so a small market team in Portland. Your goal when
Jessica,
you have...
why are you laughing?
It's like a population thing. Like, it's not offensive, right?
Jeremy,
he seemed like he didn't want to piss
David
anyone
Sampson
off
is short.
I don't want to make Portland Trailblazers.
That went too far.
No, I'm just saying, David's short. He's not sitting here in denial. Wait a second. Well, I'm actually it's Portland small. It's a small market.
Okay,
we don't have to.
So small market Portland, super small market Portland.
Thank you, David. He didn't accept what you were doing there. He just remained quiet while you called him small. What are you doing?
I didn't call him small. I called Portland small.
So those teams, when you have a superstar and you're getting rid of that superstar, you don't want to necessarily receive equal skill back. You want to receive compensation. You want to be bad. When you have these young players that you're going to build around, you would rather, in the NBA, get draft compensation to be able to build around these young guys in their young windows. So to me, if I'm Portland and I'm getting Jaylen Brown back or Jaylen Brown and Malcolm Brogdon, but no draft compensation, that's going to make me the same level of mediocre that I've been for the last decade with Damian Lillard. It's about getting bad and collecting as many assets as you can to then build your team.
And Portland is uniquely positioned in that they have ownership that is an ownership situation that is up in the air. They have the estate. They have a faceless owner right now. So any capital that Damian Lillard might have built up through his loyalty doesn't necessarily exist the way that we're used to seeing in previous times that we've seen a star that's been loyal demand his way out right now. So for all my homerism, you can cast that aside, and I can see where Portland's actually trying to leverage this through Woj and may not actually have to do right by Dame and his loyalty in this situation because it's so unique.
That's the big thing. And David, I want to hear your talk on this. The biggest reason why Portland should drag its feet on Dame is because they're trying to sell the team. And would you say that does that impact doesn't having a marketable star,
no
franchise or league level player?
We used to think that actually. We had that discussion in selling the Marlins. Should we trade Stanton first? Should we keep Stanton first? What do you do? And when you speak to potential buyers, they actually look at the contracts that are owed. If they mark them to market, and if there are players and you claim Dame is not marked to market, you would say he's overpaid now.
No, I'm just saying.
Is he marked to market?
At this point,
yes.
He's not overpaid. But down the line, as with his age and his contract going up, like
the sports are different though, because when David's talking about value assessments on a franchise, baseball doesn't have a salary cap, so trading Stanton makes you something that's more attractive because you're getting off the books a $250 million guarantee.
But at the same time, David, correct me if I'm wrong, when you buy a team, you get to call all of these salaries depreciated asset at one time, right?
You depreciate them all over 5 years,
and so that helps in terms of.
Well, it doesn't hurt,
right.
but shout out to those long-suffering owners.
But at the same time, when the value of the Trailblazers, I do not think goes up or down according to whether Lillard's on the team. I don't think that's a fact right now. I don't think the Allen Trust is thinking about that. I don't think his sister's thinking about that. I'm really talking about, and what bothers me about this whole situation, forgetting the homerism of Mike, is why is Portland in any way feeling that they have to do anything at any time? If they want to do Jeremy and say, hey, we've been mediocre, it's time for a change, we're going to tank, bring it down really, and trade Dame, great, trade him wherever you want. If you can help a guy, if we could trade a player where he wants to go, you do it.
Right.
But if you can't, then you don't. It's not a big discussion that goes on.
There's plenty of reasons why this is tricky. Because of the ownership situation, you have a front office that is in no man's land right now because the way this deal goes may define whether or not they get to stay. We see it all the time. New owners want to bring in their own people. So I'm curious to know, through your perspective, David, and yours, Amin's, you as a front office guy, David as someone that was more tied to the ownership regime, is how does the front office approach this situation where you have a star that's been loyal but hasn't necessarily been loyal to you, doesn't have a no-trade clause. He's 33 years old, wants out, and you have ownership that is likely on its way out despite them dragging their heels.
If I may, though, when it comes to you asking David Sampson that question, I think I can speak for him when I say he did not care about what a player wanted, one syllable's worth of what a player asked for.
Yeah, I understand the player, but the front office in place that has this job and is basically playing for the right to keep their jobs through handling this situation. It's a high profile acquisition.
They don't have ownership groups coming in and touring. It's one thing when the front office, I don't know if you've ever been a part of this, it's something. What employees do and what players do when you're selling the team and there's a bunch of different groups who are buying and they're walking through and they're looking at the clubhouse like they're doing test runs and everybody
like a real estate, like it's going like an open house.
Yes.
You put out finger food. You put out finger food for them.
You definitely have food in the conference room for sure, and you definitely bring everyone to the clubhouse when the players are there. You don't do it when the clubhouse is empty because you want them to meet players because you're hoping that they're total star screwers. Because then maybe they'll pay a few extra dollars. It's a huge thing. They all are. But we asked a player once, so I'd like you not to be so direct and so exclusive when you say I've never done that, because that's incorrect. So you lied.
No,
You
I just got it wrong. That you don't care one syllable. That's not lying. But tell me the time, because I'm not sure yet that I'm lying or wrong.
Okay, ready?
Tell me the time that you cared so much that you made a different deal because of something a player said. Go ahead, I'm listening.
I think Mike and Chris know, and maybe even Jeremy, we did not acquire Mike Fiers because Giancarlo Stanton did not want us to. And I went and spoke to Giancarlo about it, and Giancarlo said I would not be comfortable, and I believe that if he showed up in this clubhouse, that I would knock his teeth out.
Fiers is the guy that blew up his face.
Yes, sorry.
Stan thinks that was on purpose?
He actually does not, and we've spoken about that, but it happened.
So he just had a lot of anger.
All right, so
from it.
fair enough.
Shame on
I
you, Dan
stand
Le Batard.
corrected.
I mean, he didn't aim for his face, but the intention was to go
In
up high.
the unusual circumstance where one player was making $250 million and the player who was not valuable at all as an arm had wrecked his face and almost his career with a fastball, David Sampson acquiesced. I stand corrected.
Thank you.
I go back to what Jeremy said. I don't think it's a case of like Portland saying, well, Dame's our best player ever, whatever you want. I think this is the basketball play for them, is to trade him and to get a future, because then we talk about it all the time. The draft is a complete crapshoot, right? Like the legacy of Sam Hinkie wasn't that I'm going to tank and get the number one pick. The legacy was give me as many picks as possible, because over time we've all proven to be more or less pretty terrible at this. So let me throw 100 darts in the dark and hope one of them hits.
But Jeremy is saying that the point for Portland is go ahead and get bad. So just explain to me, please, because I didn't read anything about it and don't understand it. What is Houston doing with Jeff Green, Van Vliet, and Dylan Brooks? Like
$80 million for Dylan
No,
Brooks.
has there been an explanation anywhere that you have read or heard from anyone on what Houston is doing?
There's two words for you. It's salary floor. They have to spend it.
They have to.
Before the first day of the year. It used to be that last day of the year. Now it's the first day of the year.
Can they spend by acquiring players into space?
Yes, but the problem...
They should have done that.
No, but here's the thing.
Instead of paying Dylan Brooks $80 million.
I thought it was one word for Tita. I felt something here very strongly with my sports that I don't feel very often yesterday watching the Marlins game. And I know many of you who have heard me over the years know that I often feel sad or bad for a player when the player is unraveling in a way that is obvious. As I watched Adam Wainwright, former Caballo, nibble, and his whole season has been bad, and he seems obviously spent, and he probably knows it. that guy who threw so hard and so heavy, to see the sport pass him by, to see the combination of not only has he aged, but every young person around him is throwing 97 miles an hour. And he's like, let me see if I can throw this crouton over here at 71 miles an hour, 4 feet off the plate, and get someone to swing at it. Because even my best breaking stuff, even when I'm ahead in the count and they're expecting something off the plate, they are hitting to center field. Everything they hit in that first inning was hit hard because he can't throw the ball past anyone anymore. And that sport is covered so well right now that you know who is elite because they tell you someone's got an elite rate of missing bats, of swings and misses. Like, we're not looking at any of the old stats anymore. You can tell when a guy is excellent and you can tell when a guy is terrible. And what I was watching from Adam Wainwright yesterday made me feel profoundly bad that anyone had to go out there in a uniform and try that, because it has to stink to be 60 feet, 6 inches all the time from, I know I'm going to fail here because my arm's a noodle.
You remember the movie Rookie of the Year? And Chet Steadman loses it.
The Rocket.
And he just can't bring it anymore. He's got one more. That's what it felt like watching Adam Wainwright yesterday. It made me profoundly sad to watch this guy just try to muster everything he could. He's 2 wins away from 200 in his career. That's the only reason he's still doing this, and they had to put him on the IL after the game yesterday, just out of pure, I don't know. He's in this last season. It's a nightmare.
They should have put him on. They should make some list about dignity where you hide people.
IL dignity.
IL dignity.
It was very nice of them to do that. They could designate him. You know, he's owed he got $17.5 million this year to come back, while Molina did not. And the Dodgers did it with Syndergaard. They put him on the injured list a month ago with the blister, but it really was because he stinks. Wainwright, I don't think is going to pitch again for the Cardinals. If you're the GM of the Cardinals, you can't put him on the mound.
That's how it ends right there?
15-2 to the Marlins is how it ends? Oh.
When you go a year too far, it never ends well.
Cooper? You can't go out like that.
He says when you go a year too far, it never ends well. I saw that Nelson Cruz at 43, the Padres designated him for assignment. You got to just go walk right past your clubhouse, leave all the stuff there, and go home and never swing a bat again.
No. He's chasing 500, right? You have guys hanging around to chase milestones, and Nelson Cruz can't cope because he is my guaranteed guess for Immaculate Grid. He's played everywhere.
He's going to get another chance. He's someone who will get another chance.
At 43.
Because you can put him on a bad team and put him up to pinch hit, and he may once in a while hit one, and he's good in the clubhouse, and if you're not going anywhere, you don't worry about a roster spot. But the Padres are trying to go somewhere, and so they did it. But it's a great example. These players, with the money now, there's incentive to hang on. You don't get a lot of Spreewells anymore. You don't get a lot of
right off into the sunset.
You don't get a lot of people making fun of the money.
But you don't feel bad for Wainwright? You don't feel human emotions.
I don't feel badly. I feel badly that the Cardinals gave him $17.5 million.
Nelson Cruz, you're so happy that the Padres are bad, by the way.
Yes, I am.
Nelson Cruz, by the way, you're not going to make it. You're at 464. You're not going to make it.
Speaking of bad money spent, here, let me introduce Amin here as our basketball guy to Johnny Cueto and tell him the story of Johnny Cueto arriving to at least a little fanfare because he had a substantive name. Let's play that video for the people of how it is that he came and introduced himself to the Marlins. I believe that is his ambulance that he's turned into a giant speaker system to play his music, and he is coming in to dance on the mound with the Dominican flag wrapped around his
Tremendo tigre.
Yes, he is. He's dancing there, and he is getting
Tremenda bachata too.
$8.5 million, and he gave the Marlins 1 inning.
My hero.
A single inning. If you don't count the 5 runs he gave up in the Gulf Coast trying to make it back to the Marlins, he gave them 1 inning, and that.
One inning.
That's right.
All that for that.
Mike, you're learning just now that he gave them a single inning.
Oh, no, Dan, I knew this because I am super into baseball over the last 2 weeks because I have a group chat and I've been chasing the high of the Florida Panthers and Miami Heat. And that's how I know things like Jazz is a locker room cancer and Skip Schumacher did the smart thing, which is say, maybe you should get a second opinion. back to our winning ways, and also the Braves cheat.
Let's get to both of those because Sampson said that Jazz Chisholm would be a problem upon his return and the team is worse, even though I saw him hit a home run to straightaway center field in Fenway, which I don't think I've ever seen someone his size do that because he's pretty small and I think he's pretty great. But they beat the Red Sox 3 times. Jeremy, can you get me the game logs of what Mike is doing here when he says that the Braves cheat? Because I do think that I have mild proof on the Braves cheating, and it's just the game logs. Give me every score that the Braves have put up against the Marlins this year. Every single game, please.
4-game series in April. Braves win 11-0, 7-4, 6-4. Marlins actually win 5-4. Then in May, 6-0 Braves, 14-6 Braves, 6-3 Braves. And then this recent 3-game series, 16-4 Braves, 7-0 Braves, 6-3 Braves.
That's incontrovertible proof. You're getting your ass beat.
If you don't believe that, though, Mike Ryan thinks that a lady in the crowd is screaming only before breaking balls to help the Atlanta Braves be better than everybody.
There was damning Twitter investigation being done that there was a scream before breaking balls and silence from one person in particular that's screaming before the breaking balls when it's a fastball. And they get out to incredible fast starts over there in Atlanta. They're on a historic pace, I believe, for first inning output. Like the games are over by the second inning when you're playing the Atlanta Braves. And I'm just saying it's a little curious for someone that's been following baseball for 2 weeks.
This is what you need to do. You need to get a ticket for the next game and sit in front of that lady and see what happens. Block her view.
This is why I love baseball, by the way. It is the cheatingest ass sport on the history of the dude. There is no other athletic competition or otherwise where people develop so many different ways to cheat as there is baseball. Let me count the ways. You got a guy wearing a wire. You got a guy banging a trash can. You got a guy with an Apple Watch.
Apple Watches. You got to steal her Apple Watch too.
You got a team that hacked another team's database and stole everything. Stole their scouting reports. You got I won't even talk about PEDs. That one's far and away as far as American sports.
Amin is sitting here looking at basketball and saying, holding a
We're
guy's
horrible.
shorts.
Yeah, we're horrible. We're like, oh, hey, he cheated. How? Well, he hit me, and then I just like, oh, that's really the epitome of NBA cheating. Meanwhile, baseball, man, you guys have hackers and scientists in labs doing stuff. It's fascinating to me. It's the only time I really get caught up into baseball. It's like he said a woman was screaming like, huh. Now here's the question: how did she know? How could she tell? Was it like, is she getting something radioed in and then she's yelling it out? Like, this is the amazing part about this sport, David.
So she is an employee of the team? Is that what you're going with?
Maybe not officially, but you know.
Off the books.
Unofficial off the books.
Wet work.
They pay
There's
her
no
in
paper
cash.
trail.
They pay her.
Blackwater.
They go to the bank. They take out money, just cash, liquid, and they hand it to her in an alley.
What if she's just really good at reading the ball off the hand, right? She sees that breaking ball. She's like, ah!
She's got Joey Votto's plate discipline.
Yeah. By the way, see, they hand her the money in the alley, and the first thing she does is she flicks it. Looks like it's all there.
She's amazing at gauging spin rate as it comes from a pitcher's hand.
She takes it straight to the nail salon where she launders it.
I'm just saying, it's pretty damning evidence when you look at just the Marlins. The Marlins are great against everybody but the Braves, and it's just curious. I'm looking for answers, and I'm looking for answers beyond Acuna's really good.
Were you looking for the same answers when the Marlins had that streak with the Phillies where they would not lose to the Phillies? So they had a dominant stage. I don't remember what year it was. And there was a stage when the Marlins couldn't beat the Phillies. It wasn't the Braves. It was the Phillies.
Doesn't your mind always go to someone knows something? Like somebody's tipping something right now.
That's the part that's sad for baseball, is that the immediate response from Mike and a lot of Marlins Twitter was just like, hey, the Braves must be cheating because the Marlins have been so good against everybody else and their pitching's been so good, particularly in the month of June, that, oh my God, the Braves must be cheating. No, the Braves just have one of the greatest lineups in the history of the game.
Dude, the Patriots were deflating balls and then recording other people's practices. Come on, man. That is, you must look down on other sports like that's cheating for you guys.
Oh, we got you beat. We know how to cheat.
Yeah, man.
Formula One's pretty good at it. They've had some big cheating scandals too. But to Jeremy's point, yeah, it's plausible. It's happened. I would believe it. If you told me MLB was giving them different balls for Marlins Series 2, I'd be like, well, I could see how maybe they did that on accident, but maybe there's something to it.
Baseball's the only sport where they have to frisk athletes in the middle of a game. Hold on, let me see your hat. Let me see. They don't do that in any other sport. Like, hold on, let me see your hands.
Let me see those toesies.
Jessica, I want you to go find some video of Joe Niekro on the mound when he had a nail file in his back pocket.
Nail file?
And the umpires came out to where he was, and he tried to throw it past them.
While he was emptying his pocket.
He was emptying his pocket to show them when they frisked him, I don't have anything here. And the nail file flew behind the umpire, and then the umpire went, retrieved the cheating vessel. I don't know what it is what Joe Niekro got for that. With Haslam retiring, Lillard on the move, and Beal gone, there are only 3 players who have been with their teams in basketball since 2012. Only 3 in the entire league. You want to guess? Take a guess at who the 3 are.
Can I play?
I think you got them all. If you're smiling,
they're all on one team. I think
they are.
Yeah, the Golden State core.
Yeah, it's Draymond, it's Steph, and it's Clay are the only 3 players who have been. That's a lot of movement, man. And I don't think we can talk enough about the fact that Draymond punched Jordan Poole in the face, got him traded, and got $100 million.
The American way.
I mean. So all it is with Houston is we have to pay players a certain amount. So we will take anyone who comes here. We'll give Jeff Green 1 year, $6 million. We'll give Dylan Brooks $80 million. Van Vliet shot under 40% last year, right?
He's, I believe, the first player in NBA history to make more dollars than what his shooting percentage is.
Are you sure? I mean, yeah, I guess. I mean, Dylan Brooks shot just under 40% last year. And this goes back to the point that I made earlier, which is why can't they just trade people into space? They have some assets to do so. They can take, just give me an expiring deal. Don't be signing Dylan Brooks to that deal.
So you guys ready to play salary cap?
I would love to. I would love to hear an explanation for this.
This is how.
Other than what J.J. Redick did, which is he's a good player.
Before we do this, though, give me another time here in free agency where you've been more surprised than Dylan Brooks getting $80 million. I didn't. Go ahead.
We want to play salary cap.
All right, let's play that. That's fine. Let's play salary
Tyler
cap.
Johnson's the answer.
Alan Crabb,
who someone once said was better than Goran Dragic.
It was a better fit. I apologize and I capitulated. How many times do I have to apologize for my bad heat takes?
All right, so once upon a time, by once upon a time I mean like last year, the salary floor, which is 90% of the salary cap, you had to reach it by the last day of the regular season. So if you were a team that was bad, like Houston, and has a ton of cap space, like Houston, you would carry it into the season because you're saying, I'm going to be the official clearinghouse for every deal that needs a 3-team or a 4-team, and someone needs to take this bad deal. And I was like, well, I'll do it if you give me 2 firsts or a first here or 3 firsts there or this or that. And that's how Oklahoma City really got good, was just accepting, and making things happen that way. That was the strategy. Now, the Players Association argued that this was a disingenuous use of getting to the salary floor, because the whole point of salary floor is making sure teams are spending the money, that they're not just holding on to it. But here's the thing. If I'm a team and the 90% of the cap is $120 million, and I don't spend $120 million all year long until like the last week or so where I, pick up a guy off waivers or even at the trade deadline, I acquire someone to get me to the floor. Yes, now my payroll shows as I'm at the 120 mark, but my cash out is actually less because the guy I'm acquiring, he's already made the money he's made up to that point in the season.
But the players, from a union standpoint, they get the same amount. They're getting 32 times 90% of the cap, whichever teams are paying it. So it's not like the union should be upset with the team that is smart enough to use that strategy because players are getting their money.
Is the theory that the union took such exception to this, and keep in mind Chris Paul, who had all that power with the players' union, fell victim to, well, I don't want to go to OKC. Al Horford, I don't want to go to OKC. So it's to protect against what potentially might happen to Damian Lillard, which is I bought up all this time and I was super loyal to this franchise. I don't have a no-trade clause for whatever reason, and I'm getting sent late in my career to a nowhere franchise when I've been this legendary player.
Because they're going to turn and flip me somewhere else, but for whatever amount of time I'm there, it doesn't behoove me, right? So what they did now is now you have to spend that by day one of the regular season. So there's a risk as a team with a bunch of cap space to get to day one and you haven't spent it, and now the penalty is they take that amount and they divide it. It used to be divided among the players on the team. Now they divide among all the players across the league. So the answer, Dan, is, yeah, like you can say, oh, no, I'll just hold on to it and I'll be a clearinghouse. But what if no clearinghouse is needed, right? What if everything is in a stalemate and now you basically blew through however much, $30, $40 million in cap space? No, they're saying I'd rather spend it, know I spent it on guys that I like. And because Houston is bad, you have to overpay for a Fred VanVleet. You have to overpay for a Jeff Green. And, not to hit Mike, but J.J. Redick's right. Like, Dillon Brooks is not a bad player. He's got some bad publicity. He's a little bit of a dumbass. Yeah. But, he's not a bad –
he's a bad shooter.
Well, my exception – here's what I was doing. I think Dillon Brooks on the right team – I think he's a superior defender. On the perimeter, you'd be hard-pressed to find – many better in that league. I'm not saying that in the right situation he can't be a winning player. I'm saying it's absurd to pay him $80 million. Gabe Vincent went for $33 million.
I didn't think there were going to be competing offers for Dillon Brooks. I thought that the market went to $80 million without Houston competing against anybody for that.
First of all, the other thing that happens, and this is typically an NFL thing, but has not bled to our sport, where you hear the deal, guys, nothing has been signed. We don't know what these contracts look like. We don't know what kind of incentives are built in there. We don't know what kind of guarantees are built in there. And the reason why we're hearing these numbers is because the people leaking aren't the teams. They're the agents. The agents have a vested interest in hearing the highest number possible, right? So I don't know what Dillon Brooks' deal looks like, but I would just hold off on just judging it before you hear it.
I think the narrative around Dillon Brooks got a little out of control, and he's partly to blame for that because of what he did before the Lakers series. I'm not saying he's a bad player. I'm also saying what J.J. Redick did was a little absurd. If you're going to spend $80 million, I think there are better players to spend it on in that market if you're going to overspend.
That wanted to go there?
I mean, Dante DiVincenzo isn't going to say no to an $80 million offer from Houston.
I mean, what did he get?
He got 50. He got 50, and Gabe Vincent got 33.
He got 50 to go play with his friends in New York City.
I don't understand what they were doing with and Dante DiVincenzo. That's not that bad of a deal.
No, it's not.
But it is when you compare that Gabe Vincent went for 33.
But my point is, if you're if you're Houston, there is a premium you're paying to get guys here. And the one thing you could say about all three of those guys, regardless of what they're hard workers, they're dirt workers, they're blue-collar guys. Like, these are guys that are coming in. Remember, Houston has a crazy young locker room of guys that don't have any idea how to work or, like, what it means to be in this league and what kind of work it takes. Dillon Brooks might be a dumbass, but he's not lazy. He doesn't cut corners. Like, he puts in the work. Now, whether he's a good basketball player, like, in terms of decision-making is a different story, but at least you want to have those guys in that locker room.
But if I wanted to ask you a top 5 list right now of the 5 worst contracts in the NBA, Dillon Brooks is not on that list.
No.
He's not even close to that list. We're talking about this as though Houston wasted $80 million, but it really is 20 because you do it per year. It's 20 per year. And when you look around at the number of players making more than 20, Dillon Brooks made a mistake. He screwed with the wrong bear. No doubt about that. But as a player, the way the NBA is, $20 million, not unreasonable.
David, do you know what the average salary in the NBA is now?
I would assume 6.9.
It's like 12 and change. Like,
That's
20
outrageous.
is not bad.
By the end of this contract, there is a good chance, though, that he's in the discussion for worst contract in the league.
Let me go through some money numbers with you guys and just change of sports numbers. So which one of these is funnier to you? I mean, that because the sport has obviously changed, so Evan Fournier has twice as many three-pointers as Larry Bird ever did, but also Max Strus is making as much as Larry Bird and Magic Johnson made in their careers combined. And when you talk, because I think David will have some interesting thoughts on this here, this is from NFL Rookie Watch on Twitter. When you look at the money differences in the sport, the idea that Tyreek Hill, the best wide receiver in the sport, has got a 4-year contract, $120 million, 72 guaranteed. Christian McCaffrey, 4 years, $64 million, 30 guaranteed. Desmond Bain, 5 years, $207 million, $207 million guaranteed. That's crazy, given what the lifespans are in the sport and the injuries. That's an insane difference. That Desmond Bain's guaranteed money would be 3 times as high as Tyreek Hill's, and Jesus,
2 things,
7 times as high as Christian McCaffrey.
This is real easy. There's 2 things. One, Tyreek Hill and Christian McCaffrey are way more likely to have a devastating injury than Desmond Bain is. 2, hard cap versus not a hard cap.
3, strength of union. Doesn't get talked about enough. The strength of the NBA Players Association, the Major League Baseball Players Union, it makes the NFL Players Union look as though it does not exist, the Players Association in the NFL.
I thought Dominique Foxworth would have you believe that used to be true, but isn't quite as true as it used to be.
Maybe there's incremental improvement, but Bain, $200 million.
I know, but his point, I think his point is the more relevant point, which is on any given play, it's vastly more likely that you lose Tyreek Hill or Christian McCaffrey for the entirety of that contract. It's why the contracts have less guaranteed money in football.
What about baseball, where pitchers are getting injured all the time and signing long-term deals? You say that the Brooks contract is bad at the end of the deal. What about all the 10-year contracts, the Pujols contract, or the current contracts for guys who are going into their 40s?
I have till the end of the segment to walk a take back, and I think with the salary cap going up year over year, probably Brooks is going to be okay at $20 million by the end of it.
We're getting a new TV deal in a couple of years, man. Like, it's going to be a middle class deal in the NBA.
I understand defending your union, and I understand the concept, but at the end of the day, it's defined by one thing. It's what the benefits are for the retired group of players and what the guaranteed money is for the current group of players.
Are any of you surprised in any way that Van Vliet is getting a bigger contract than Kyrie Irving?
No.
That's crazy.
Rather have Van Vliet.
That's just crazy.
Yeah.
If I said that to you 3 years ago,
3 years ago, Kyrie was already on this path.
Yeah, but come on, man.
3 years ago was the start of the pandemic.
Did Kyrie Irving have many options? Because I was surprised to see him go back to Dallas because it didn't seem to be working in Dallas. And now you're headed toward, after the transaction talk on Lillard, we're headed straight toward Embiid and Luka being next on who's Miami going to get.
Oh, Embiid's already playing
Photoshop
ball.
season.
The Watcher. The Watcher.
The Watcher.
Yeah.
Oh, man. We haven't talked about that enough.
Guys are insatiable. You want every player on the Heat.
Briefly, though.
They turned it to New York. They turned it to Knicks fans.
Briefly, though, because I know we're going to lose you here for a little bit, 50 seconds on Kyrie and who the Mavericks were negotiating against. They even gave him a player option in that final year, and Kyrie seemed to be out of public moves. In fact, he was threatening to go to Phoenix through leagues for the veteran minimum.
I think, again, I would be very interested in seeing what his contract looks like before I judge it, because I'd be surprised if there isn't some language in there that says, hey, you don't have to be an all-star, but you have to play, either minutes or games.
These contracts, I want to get into the way this stuff is being reported by the reporters. What are you laughing about, David?
It's in the contract that he has to play.
That's right.
That's really
That's
something.
right. That's right. I mean,
you got to play.
That's where we are with Kyrie Irving.
Strong union.